Hello, good day. I'm Dave Alicante and we will discuss about nervous system and its function. What is nervous system? Nervous system, the network of nerve cells and fibers which transmits nerve impulses between parts of the body. Nervous system, in short answer, the nervous system controls everything you do, including breathing, walking, thinking, and feeling. This system is made up of your brain, spinal cord, and all of the nerves of your body. The brain is the control center and the spinal cord is the major highway that connects into the brain. The nervous system consists of the brain, spinal cord, sensory organs, and all of the nerves that connect these organs with the rest of the body. Together, these organs are responsible for the control of the body and communication among its parts. The brain and spinal cord form the control center known as the central nervous system (CNS), where information is evaluated and decision made. The sensory nerves and sense organs of the peripheral nervous system (PNS) monitor condition inside and outside of the body and send this information to the CNS. Efferent nerves in the PNS carry signals from the control center to the muscle, glands, and organs to regulate their functions. So, the brain and spinal cord, sensory organs, and all of the nerves that connects these organs to the rest of the body make up the nervous system. These organs work together to manage the body and communicate with its many sections. The central nervous system (CNS) is the control center made up of the brain and spinal cord that evaluates information and makes choices. The sensory nerves and sense organs of the peripheral nervous system (PNS) monitor and convey information to the central nervous system (CNS) about situation inside and outside of the body. The PNS efferent neurons transmit signals from the control center to the muscle, glands, and organs, allowing them to regulate their functions. Nervous system anatomy. Nervous tissue. The majority of the nervous system is tissue made of two classes of cells, neurons and neurologia. Neurons. Neurons, also known as nerve cells, communicate within the body by transmitting electrochemical signals. Neurons look quite different from other cells in the body due to the many long circular processes that extend from their central cell body. The cell body is the roughly round part of a neuron that contains the nucleus, mitochondria, and most of the circular organelles. Small tree-like structures called dendrites extend from the cell body to pick up stimuli from the environment. Other neurons or sensory receptor cells, long transmitting processes called axons, extend from the cell body to send signals onward to other neurons or effector cells in the body. So, neurons, also known as nerve cells, use electrochemical signals to interact throughout the body. Because of the numerous lenticular processes that stretch from their core cell body, neurons differ significantly from other cells in the body. Nucleus, mitochondria, and the majority of circular organelles are found in the cell body, which is roughly circular section of a neuron. Dendrites, which are small tree-like structures that extend from the cell body to pick up stimuli from the environment. Other neurons or sensory receptor cells are small tree-like structures that extend from the cell body to pick up stimuli from the environment. Other neurons or sensory receptor cells, axons, are long transmission process that extend from the cell body and send signals to neighboring neurons or effector cells throughout the body. Neurologia. Neurologia is also known as glial cells, act as the helper cells of the nervous system. Each neuron in the body is surrounded by anywhere from 6 to 60 neuroglia that protect, feed, and insulate the neuron. Because neurons are extremely specialized cells that are essential to body function and almost never reproduce, neurologia are vital to maintaining the functional nervous system. So, neurologia is commonly known as glial cells, are nervous system assistant cells. Which neuron in the body is surrounded by neurologlia which protect, feed, and insulate it. Neurologlia are necessary to maintaining a functional nervous system since neurons are exceptionally specialized cells that are essential to bodily function and almost never proliferate. There are three basic classes of neurons: afferent neurons, efferent neurons, and interneurons. So, number 1, afferent neurons, also known as sensory neurons. Afferent neurons transmit sensory signals to the central nervous system from receptors in the body. So, afferent neurons are neurons that receive information from other neurons, also known as sensory neurons, transfer sensory impulses from the body's receptors to the central nervous system. Number 2, efferent neurons. So, efferent neurons and afferent neurons are not same. Efferent neurons, also known as motor neurons. Efferent neurons transmit signals from the central nervous system to effectors in the body such as muscle and glands. So, efferent neurons are neurons that send messages back to the brain. Efferent neurons, also known as motor neurons, carry signal from the central nervous system to bodily effectors such as muscles and glands. Number 3, interneurons. Interneurons form complex networks within the central nervous system to integrate the information received from afferent neurons and direct the function of the body through efferent neurons. So, interneurons are established intricate networks within the central nervous system to integrate information from afferent neurons into control bodily functions by efferent neurons. Brain. The brain is a soft, wrinkled organ that weighs about 3 pounds, is located inside the cranial cavity, where the bones of the skull surround and protect it. The approximately 100 billion neurons of the brain form the main control center of the body. The brain and spinal cord together form the central nervous system, CNS, where information is processed and responses originate. The brain, the set of higher mental functions such as consciousness, memory, planning, and voluntary actions, also controls lower body functions such as the maintenance of respiration, heart rate, blood pressure, and digestion. So, brain, a soft wrinkled organ, weight about 3 pounds, is located inside the cranial cavity, which is surrounded and protected by the bones of the skull. The brain's 100 billion neurons serve as the body's primary control center. The central nervous system, CNS, is made up of the brain and spinal cord, which is where information process and reaction are generated. The brain, which regulates higher mental function like consciousness, memory, planning, and voluntary acts, is also in charge of lower physical functions like breathing, heart rate, blood pressure, and digestion. Spinal cord. The spinal cord is a long, thin mass of bundled neurons that carries information through the vertebral cavity of spine, beginning at the medulla oblongata of the brain on its superior end and continuing inferiorly to the lumbar region of the spine. In the lumbar region, the spinal cord separates into a bundle of individual nerves called cauda equina. Due to its resemblance to the horse's tail that continues inferiorly to the sacrum and coccyx, the white matter of the spinal cord functions as the main conduit of nerve signals to the body from the brain. The gray matter of the spinal cord integrates reflexes to stimuli. So, spinal cord is a long, thin mass of bundled neurons that conveys information through the vertebral cavity of the spine. Starting at the superior end of the brain's medulla oblongata and extending inferiorly to the lumbar region, the spinal cord splits into a bundle of distinct nerves termed the cauda equina, owing to its similarity to a horse's tail. In the lumbar region, which continues inferiorly to the sacrum and coccyx, the white matter of the spinal cord is responsible for carrying nerve signals from the brain to the rest of the body. Reflexes to stimuli are integrated in the gray matter of the spinal cord. Nerve cells. Nerves. Nerves are bundled of axons in the peripheral nervous system (PNS) that act as information highways to carry signals between the brain and a spinal cord and the rest of the body. So, each axon is wrapped in a connective tissue sheath called the endoneurium. Individual axons of the nerve are bundled into groups of axons called fascicles, wrapped in a sheath of connective tissue called the perineum. Finally, many fascicles are wrapped together in another layer of connective tissue called the epineurium to form a whole nerve. The wrapping of nerves with connective tissue helps to protect axons and to increase the speed of their communication within the body. So, nerves are axon bundles in the peripheral nervous system (PNS) that operate information highways carrying impulses from the brain and spinal cord to the rest of the body. The endoneurium is a connective tissue sheath that surrounds each axon. Individual nerve axons are bundled into fascicles, which are then enveloped in a connective tissue sheath termed the perineum. Finally, the perineum, a layer of connective tissue, wraps several fascicles together to form a whole nerve. Nerves are wrapped with connective tissue to protect the axon and boost the speed with which they communicate throughout the body. Afferent, efferent, and mixed nerves. Some of the nerves in the body are specialized for carrying information in only one direction, similar to a one-way street. Nerves that carry information from sensory receptors to the central nervous system only are called afferent nerves. Other neurons known as efferent nerves carry signals only from the central nervous system to effectors such as muscle and glands. Finally, some nerves are mixed nerves that contain both afferent and efferent axons. Mixed nerves function like two-way street where afferent axons act as lanes heading toward the central nervous system and efferent axons act as lanes heading away from the central nervous system. So, nerves are divided into three types, afferent, efferent, and mixed. Similar to a one-way street, some same neurons in the body are specialized for delivering information in just one direction. Afferent neurons, afferent nerves are nerves that exclusively carry information from sensory receptors to the central nervous system. Efferent nerves are neurons that solely transport messages from the central nervous system to effectors like muscle and glands. Finally, some nerves have both afferent and efferent axons, making them mixed nerves. Afferent axon acts lanes leading toward the central nervous system, whereas efferent axons act as lanes leading away from the central nervous system and mixed nerves. Cranial nerves. Extending from the inferior side of the brain are 12 pairs of cranial nerves. Each cranial nerve pair is identified by a Roman numeral 1 to 12 based upon its location along the anterior posterior axis of the brain. Each nerve also has a descriptive name that identifies its function or location. The cranial nerves provide a direct connection to the brain for the special sense organs, muscle of the head, neck and shoulders, the heart, and the G1 tract. So, cranial nerves are nerves that go through the skull. 12 pairs of cranial nerves through from the brain's inferior side, and each cranial nerve pair is assigned a Roman numeral from 1 to 12 based on its position along the brain's anterior posterior axis. Each neuron also has a descriptive term that identifies each function or location. The specific sense organs, muscle of the head, neck and shoulders, the heart, and the G1 tract all have direct connection to the brain by cranial nerves. Spinal nerves. Extending from the left and the right side of the spinal cord are 31 pairs of spinal nerves. The spinal nerves are mixed nerves that carry both sensory and motor signals between the spinal cord and specific regions of the body. The 31 spinal nerves are split into 5 groups named for the 5 regions of the vertebral column. Thus, there are 8 pairs of cervical nerves, 12 pairs of thoracic nerves, 5 pairs of lumbar nerves, 5 pairs of sacral nerves, and 1 pair of coccygeal nerves. Each spinal nerve exists from the spinal cord through the intervertebral foramen, between a pair of vertebrae, or between the C1 vertebra and the occipital bone of the skull. And So, nerves in the spine. 31 pairs of 31 pairs of spinal nerves branch out from the left and the right side of the spinal cord. The spinal nerves are mixed nerves that transmit sensory and motor messages from the spinal cord various parts of the body. Meanings. The meanings are protective coverings of the central nervous system (CNS). They consist of three layers: the dura mater, arachnoid mater, and the pia mater. So, the dura mater, which means tough matter, is the thickest, toughest, and most superficial layer of the meanings. Made of dense, irregular connective tissue, it contains many tough collagen fibers and blood vessels. Dura mater protects the CNS from external damage, contains cerebrospinal fluid that surrounds the CNS, and provides blood to the nervous tissue of the CNS. So it's a matter of life and death, and the dura mater, which literally translates to tough matter, is the meaning's thickest, roughest, and most superficial layer. It is made up of many stiff collagen fibers and blood vessels, and is made of dense, uneven connective tissue. The dura mater protects the CNS from external harm, holds the cerebrospinal fluid that surrounds it, and supplies blood to the CNS nerves tissue. Next, arachnoid matter. The arachnoid matter, which means spider-like matter, is much thinner and more delicate than the dura mater. It lines the inside of the dura mater and contains many thin fibers that connect it to the underlying pia mater. These fibers cross a fluid-filled space called the subarachnoid space between the arachnoid mater and the pia mater. So, arachnoid mater is much thinner and more fragile than the dura mater. It lines the inside of the dura mater, is connected to the underlying pia mater by many thin end fibers between arachnoid mater and the pia mater. These fibers cross a fluid-filled region known as subarachnoid space. Pia mater. The pia mater, which means tender mother, is a thin and delicate layer of tissue that rests on the outside of the brain and spinal cord, containing many blood vessels that feed the nervous tissue of the CNS. The pia mater penetrates into valleys of the sulci. And fissures of the brain, as it covers the entire surface of the CNS. So, the pia mater, which is literally translated to tender mother, is a thin and delicate layer of tissue that surrounds the brain and spinal cord. The pia mater penetrates into valleys of the sulci and fissures of the brain, as it covers the whole surface of the CNS, containing many blood vessels that nourish the nerve tissue of the CNS. Then we have cerebrospinal fluid. The space surrounding the organs of the CNS is filled with a clear fluid known as cerebrospinal fluid, CSF. CSF is formed from blood plasma by special structures called choroid plexuses. The choroid plexuses contain many capillaries lined with epithelial tissue that filters blood plasma and allows the filter fluid to enter the space around the brain. Newly created CSF flows through the inside of the brain in hollow spaces called ventricles, and through a small cavity in the middle of the spinal cord called the central canal. CSF also flows through the subarachnoid space around the outside of the brain and spinal cord. CSF is constantly produced at the choroid plexuses and reabsorbed into the bloodstream at structures called arachnoid valley. And a transparent fluid called cerebrospinal fills the area around the organs of the CNS. Choroid plexuses are unusual structures that make CSF from blood plasma. Many capillaries lined with epithelial tissue, and the choroid plexuses filter blood plasma and allow the filtered fluid to enter the area around the brain. CSF is generated and flows through ventricles on the inside of the brain through the central canal. CSF is generated and flows through ventricles on the inside of the brain and through the central canal, a tiny chamber in the middle of the spinal cord. CSF also circulates around the exterior of the brain and spinal cord in the subarachnoid region. The choroid plexuses constantly create CSF, which is then reabsorbed into bloodstream by arachnoid valley. So next, cerebrospinal fluid provides several vital functions to the central nervous system. Number 1, CSF absorbs shocks between the brain and skull and between the spinal cord and vertebrae. This shock absorption protects the CNS from blows or sudden changes in velocity, such as during a car accident. So, number 1, shocks between the brain and the skull, as well as between the spinal cord and the vertebrae, are absorbed by CSF. The CNS is protected by this shock absorption from hits or rapid changes in velocity, such as those experienced in a vehicle collision. Number 2, the brain and the spinal cord float within the CSF, reducing their apparent weight through buoyancy. The brain is a very large but soft organ that requires a high volume of blood to function effectively. The reduced weight in cerebrospinal fluid allows the blood vessels of the brain to remain open and helps protect the nervous tissue from becoming crushed under its own weight. So, number 2, because the brain and spinal cord float in the CSF, their apparent weight is reduced. The brain is a huge, delicate organ that needs a large amount of blood to function properly, and reduced weight of the cerebrospinal fluid keeps the brain's blood arteries open and protects the neural tissue from being crushed by its own weight. Next, CSF help to maintain chemical homeostasis within the central nervous system. It contains ions, nutrients, oxygen, and albumins that support the chemical and osmotic balance of nervous tissue. CSF also removes waste products that form as byproducts of cellular metabolism within nervous tissues. So, number 3, the central nervous system chemical equilibrium is maintained by CSF. It contains iron, nutrients, oxygen, and albumins that help neural tissue maintain its chemical and osmotic balance. CSF also eliminates waste products from neural tissue that arise as a result of cellular metabolism. Next, Sense organs. All of the body's many sense organs are components of the nervous system. What are known as the special sense? Vision, taste, smell, hearing, and balance are all detected by specialized organs such as the eyes, taste buds, and olfactory epithelium. Sensory receptors for general sense like touch, temperature, and pain are found throughout most of the body. All of the sensory receptors of the body are connected to afferent neurons that carry their sensory information to the CNS to be processed and integrated. So, sense organs, the nervous system is made up all the body's sense organs. Vision, taste, smell, hearing, and balance are all senses that are detected by specialized organs such as the eyes, taste buds, and olfactory epithelium. Sensory receptors for the five senses touch, temperature, pain, and smell can be found all throughout the body. Afferent neurons connect all of the body's sensory receptors, carrying sensory information to the CNS to be processed and integrated. So, doon nagtatapos ang ating explanation, and thank you.